Right. I'll be filming a prediction video for the biggest game of week two of the college football season, Texas versus Michigan. Both teams to me looked about how I thought they would look in week one. Texas looked better to me, uh, but Texas clearly has an advantage at quarterback in this game. So Texas has such an advantage at quarterback over Michigan that if Quinn Ewers got hurt and they played their backup quarterback Arch Manning, Texas would still have a quarterback advantage. But Quinn Ewers was already an elite quarterback last season, and I think he's gonna be even better this season and put up even bigger numbers than he did last season. And to tell you how good I think Quinn Ewers is, I think he's probably going to be a top 10 pick in the next NFL draft. So for Michigan at quarterback, Sharon Moore, the new head coach there, decided not to go with Alex Orji at quarterback, who was their expected starting quarterback. He decided to go with Davis Warren, who did not look very good in the opener. He didn't look to be near as good as J.J. McCarthy was, and J.J. McCarthy, I know he ended up getting drafted really high, but I never thought that he was an elite college quarterback. I thought he was a solid quarterback that did a good job at managing the game for them. But this Davis Warren didn't look any good at all to me. So he completed 15 of 25 of his passes for only 118 yards. So at tight end, this is the one advantage that Michigan has over Texas offensively, in my opinion. Michigan's tight end, Colston Loveland, is an elite tight end. He was a really good tight end last year, but I think he's even better this year. He's a top five tight end in the country, no doubt. Possibly even the best tight end in the country. It's really too early for me to say for sure who is the best tight end, but I think he's good enough to have a chance to get in the first round of the draft next year. So he had in the opener 8 catches for 87 yards and a touchdown. And it is very useful to have a good tight end. But the problem for Michigan is wide receiver. Texas has a huge advantage over them at wide receiver. And of course, having a good tight end is good if you are needing just a short amount of yards, but to beat a team like Texas, you really need to be more explosive offensively. And in the opener, none of Michigan's wide receivers had more than 15 yards, and one of them at least is going to have to step up and have a big game, I think, for Michigan to have any chance of winning this game. So for Texas at wide receiver, Isaiah Bond, the Alabama transfer, who I thought would become their top target now that Xavier Worthy is gone. Uh, did a good job in the opener. He had 5 catches for 61 yards and a touchdown in the game. And their five-star freshman wide receiver Ryan Wingo impressed in the opener, having 4 catches for 70 yards. I didn't know that he would get very much playing time uh, this year as a freshman. But their other two transfer wide receivers, uh, Matthew Golden and Silas Bolden, uh, mm, did a decent job too overall. Bolden only made 1 catch for 5 yards, but it was a touchdown catch. And Matthew Golden had 2 touchdown catches in the game for 50 yards and had 3 total catches. Texas is really good at wide receiver and at running back. I don't really know who has the advantage. It's pretty close in my opinion. So I didn't know how Texas would be at running the football with C.J. Baxter, their starting running back, being out for the season. I knew they would be good, but I didn't know if they would be elite. But it looks like they are going to be a really good running team. So Jaden Blue, who was expected to be the number 2 running back behind C.J. Baxter this season, looked good in the opener, having 57 yards on 11 carries. He's a really good, talented running back, and a 4-star freshman running back for Texas impressed in the opener. Jarrett Gibson is his name. He ran for 67 yards and a touchdown on only 10 carries. So it looks like those will be the top 2 running backs for Texas this season, and I think they're probably going to make a good combination. And for Michigan at running back, Donovan Edwards, I had thought was going to have a really good season this year, and maybe he still will. So in 2022, Donovan Edwards had a really good season and looked like one of the best running backs in the country, and had a lot of hype going into 2023, but really disappointed. He didn't have that very many yards last season, but in the national championship game, he looked like he had in 2022 again, getting those 2 big touchdown runs and rushing for over 100 yards on only 6 carries. And he hadn't gotten 100 yards in 2023 until the national title game. So it looked like he maybe had gotten back to his old ways. And that's what I had thought. But in the opener last Saturday, he only had 27 rushing yards on 11 carries. Now, part of that could be Michigan's offensive line not being near as good. Uh, but they had another running back uh, that did well in the game, Mullings, who hasn't played much at college football, but he had 92 yards rushing on 15 carries. He could be good for Michigan. But on the offensive line, I think Texas clearly has the advantage this year. So the 4 starters that Texas has back from last season on their offensive line are all future NFL players. And it's not just that they have 4 out of 5 starters coming back. They've got some other talented offensive linemen back that played last year that it just didn't start. Texas, I think, probably has the 3rd best offensive line in the country, behind only Alabama and Georgia. And Michigan's offensive line last Saturday looked down clearly from what it's been these past 3 years when they've had these amazing offensive lines. Now, I'm not saying Michigan has a bad offensive line. I don't think they do, but I don't really think their offensive line is elite this time. But on defense, uh, Michigan, I think, probably has a little bit of an advantage on the defensive line. Texas, though, does have a really good defensive line, I think. But Michigan has some players on their defensive line that are all probably going to be highly drafted. So Mason Graham was the one that got the most attention this offseason. But Josiah Stewart did the best of all of them last Saturday. He had a big game of 5 tackles and 2 sacks. And they've also got Kenneth Grant, who is a returning starter, a really good player on their defensive line. And then they have Rashawn Benny, who is the one new starter on Michigan's defensive line that really impressed in the opener, making 5 tackles and getting a sack in the game. And then at linebacker, both teams are good, but I wouldn't say they're elite. Now, I would probably give Texas a little bit of an advantage at linebacker because they do have Anthony Hill, who I think is a elite player. Michigan, even though they've got good linebackers, I don't think they have a linebacker as good as him on their team. And then in the secondary, Michigan, I know is good, and Texas, I think has the ability to have a good secondary this year. But they struggled in the secondary last year, which is probably what stopped them from winning the national championship. But Texas's secondary does have a lot of talent. Andrew Maguba, the Clemson transfer, is supposed to have a big year this year at safety, and then Malik Muhammad, the sophomore cornerback who hasn't started very many college games yet, is expected to have a big year, and they've got other talented defensive backs that are experienced. And then for Michigan, Will Johnson is a top 5 cornerback in the country, no doubt. Probably a top 3 cornerback in the country. I think he's pretty sure going to be a first round draft pick. He's the one that had the pick 6 in the opener. And Macari Page at safety is also a player that is going to be a highly drafted. And of course, they've got other talented defensive backs too. But Steve Sarkisian, I think, probably now is a top 10 head coach. And at the line of scrimmage, I think that uh, Texas's offensive line can match Michigan's defensive line, and I think that Texas's defensive line will probably actually win the battle over at Michigan's offensive line in this game. So I think that this game will be a one-score game late into the fourth quarter, but I do think that Michigan's defense will keep them in this game. But I think that Texas's offense is so good this year to where they'll still score a decent amount of points in this game. And I just don't think that Michigan's offense is explosive enough to win the game. I think that Texas will pull away late and maybe they get a field goal late in the fourth quarter to go up by 10. So my prediction for the game is Texas 30, Michigan 20. So that will be it with this video, and please subscribe and thanks for watching, and I'll be back very soon.